Good day, salam, sat sri akal, namaste, shalom. Welcome to all our viewers. This is Ayesha Siddiqa with Neighbors Talking for Nair.tv. We had discussed American elections last week, but this week I have another expert, somebody who has a good look at US foreign policy and South Asia and looks at relations between United States foreign policy and South Asia. This is Seema Sirohi, a renowned columnist, journalist in Washington, D.C. So, welcome, Seema, to Neighbors Talking. And the reason we're discussing, I mean, although Neighbors Talking is meant to talk about the South Asian neighborhood, but because, America, United States is so relevant to politics of South Asia. So, we have to we take keen interest in these elections and election results and what happens in Washington. So आप ये बताइए that so what are the results? I mean, are you happy? Are you dissatisfied? I mean, we were so nervous that they are going to go to Trump. So what happened? हुआ क्या?
हुआ ये कि the way Biden framed the whole elections, that Trump candidates represent a threat to democracy, and they're going to take away more of your rights, like Trump's Supreme Court did in the summer when the federal right of a woman to access abortion was taken away. So that actually worked to Democrats' advantage. They overperformed, although nobody expected them to do this well. The Republicans will still hold the House. All of the results are still not in, believe it or not. It's like 10 days or so, and they're still counting in California. But the Republicans will get 218 seats in the House. That means they will have the majority. Senate is 50-50, so Democrats hold the control in the Senate. There's
Okay.
one seat still to be decided in Georgia.
Okay, and what is the assessment in Georgia?
Well, there'll be a runoff, and the Democrats could win that as well, which will put them in a more comfortable position in the Senate. That means, all the threats about impeaching Biden that the Republicans were talking about before the elections are no longer going to be a source of problem or worry for the Democrats. So, generally speaking, the Republicans overpromised and underperformed, and the Democrats overperformed, better than expected.
Tell me, were you nervous before the elections? I mean, I remember talking to our friend Raza Rumi, right? And I remember this is like a month before elections, and he was so nervous about what the future of United States holds. Uh, were you nervous?
I think all of us are nervous about what's happening in the US in terms of its domestic politics. There's a great churning going on. But as of now, you can breathe a sigh of relief that, enough Americans want their democratic institutions to hold firm. They don't want people to question the results of elections, because that
Okay.
means the very basis is being questioned, and that creates chaos. People were reminded of the Trump years. And generally speaking, moderate Republicans and independent voters kind of said, we don't want that. So we can breathe a sigh of relief, but in no way can we be overconfident, I would say, because just last night, Donald Trump announced his bid again to run
Oh,
for
wow.
2024 presidential elections. I mean, that is a whole another ball game. So that means Republican Party has to contend with that. the star of the Republican Party now is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who
Okay.
won a second term, handily, a thumping victory. So he's supposed to be people want him to be the nominee.
Right, right. So there will be another battle. मतलब कि उनका अपना झगड़ा अब शुरू होगा till next year.
बहुत जोरदार का झगड़ा होगा। अभी झगड़ा हो रहा है सेनेट और रिपब्लिकन्स में, सेनेट रिपब्लिकन्स एंड हाउस रिपब्लिकन्स में, कि लीडरशिप किसको मिलनी चाहिए। मतलब लीडरशिप ट्रम्प वाले आदमी को मिलनी चाहिए कि जो रेगुलर लीडर्स हैं, जैसे केविन मकार्थी इज एंगलिंग टू बी द majority leader in the House, and Mitch McConnell wants to remain the minority leader in the Senate. But there is a little rebellion going on in both chambers.
Right. But aren't there cases against Donald Trump? Aren't they?
अरे बहुत हैं, यू कान कीप काउंट ऑफ देम। हर तरह के केसेस चल रहे हैं, बट नथिंग हैज कम टू फ्रूइशन इन द सेंस लाइक it's not like he's going to be indicted anytime soon. So we have to wait and see how long that takes for any of the cases, whether it's tax cases, whether it's the result from January 6th hearings, where the the committee sort of implied that Donald Trump inspired the mob to
Right.
attack the Capitol.
Hmm. It makes me kind of smile as well because it's a reminder that in Pakistan, we're going through a similar thing that, there are cases, arguments being brought against Imran Khan, and yet uh, nobody's about to put him in prison. So why? I mean, there the issue is that, the establishment is not very excited about doing anything severe to Imran Khan. What's happening in the US? I mean, is it the court system? Can you explain to the viewers that why is it that he's not being indicted in anything?
Because the cases are very complicated, especially the financial cases, very complicated. His paperwork is, nobody, it'll take an army to decipher that. And
Oh
that's
God.
what's going on. Then you have to remember that some of the judges in some of the cases in some of the states are Republican appointed. They might be sympathetic. They might feel, it serves society no great purpose and no great, accomplishment to put this guy in jail. So it's a very complicated situation. It's not clear why not even a single case has come to conclusion yet. They've had
You know,
2 years.
yeah, I mean, it reminds you that, how even United States has progressed from the time of Watergate, when it was easy to impeach a president, to now an ex-president, and everybody is nervous in doing something to him.
A lot has changed. At that time during Watergate, there was kind of a bipartisan sense of shame, if I may call it that. Republicans were equally embarrassed by what Nixon had done. Now
Hmm.
it's not like that at all. The society
Okay.
is so polarized. Those who are in, it's kind of calcified. Those who are Republicans, the hardcore Republicans, they feel a certain way, they think a certain way. Democrats think another way. So there's no sense that the two sides should come together for the greater good, as it were.
Hmm. But did you feel, I mean, in the last 3-4 years, and especially Trump's years, did you feel the change in, say, Washington D.C.? I mean, I was talking to our friend Wajid Ali Sayed, and I remember he telling me that he went to some bar, and there were these very white Republican, Trump supporters there, and it was the first time he felt uncomfortable. something was said. So did you feel that the change in Washington? You've been here for many years.
I haven't felt anything personally, but I can confess that I have felt some sense of fear on behalf of my son, who looks brown,
Okay.
who looks, so right now he's not here, but if he comes back to the US to work, yeah, I mean, I don't know, depending on what happens in 2024, who
Right.
will
Right.
who wins the White House. Yes, I worry about that. Absolutely. Um, I mean, right now I'm still an Indian citizen. What if I were to become an American? Would I be accepted? I don't know. you know,
Hmm. Hmm. I mean,
after
these
all
are
after all these years of living here.
these were questions which never one never thought would occur in the United States of all the places.
Yes, but they are occurring because um, there is such a sense of fear among a certain set of white people that this browning of America, as we call it, is happened too fast. It's led to cultural changes they're not comfortable with. There's too much illegal immigration, etc., etc. So it's very tribal in that sense. They feel fear, they feel being overwhelmed by people who don't look like them.
But you think, all right, so that brings me to the next question, is that how then significant is foreign policy, or how significant was foreign policy in these during these midterm elections?
Very significant. You know that Ukraine was extremely worried that if Republicans win both houses or have a thumping majority, that they would cut aid to Ukraine.
Hmm.
There was a lot of lobbying going on in DC before the elections by Ukraine has hired several firms and lobbyists, because Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the House, had said that he'd given an interview saying that if American people are suffering under a recession, I can't be
Right.
writing a blank check to Ukraine.
Hmm.
So there was, yeah, there are some foreign policy issues involved. I'm sure the Europeans are extremely worried, or were extremely worried about MAGA Republicans or Trump Republicans, sort of taking over the Congress. Because they think very differently. Biden has done a lot in the last 2 years to sort of repair the alliance with Europe.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but basically, what Donald Trump was saying to Europe was that, listen, if you want to have business with Russia, then don't put the burden, the financial burden of defending Europe, on United States. Wasn't that one of the key points?
Yes, and I think Joe Biden might even privately thank Trump in his mind for forcing that issue, because previous American president had been very polite about European countries spending 2% of their GDP on defense. They were happy to have a free ride on the backs of Americans, but Donald Trump sort of clarified the mind of many Europeans. Then came Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and that absolutely put the issue front and center. So you saw the changes. There's more defense spending in Germany. There's NATO expansion, and Finland and Sweden, and so things are changing. And Biden and his team would like Europeans to carry more of the burden, especially because the Europeans are not completely aligned with the Americans on the China question. So, as
Hmm.
you know, Biden has declared that the two big policy documents that came out, that China is their
Yeah,
main strategic
main.
competitor. The Europeans, the German chancellor went running to meet Xi Jinping after the party congress. So, yeah, the Americans are not exactly jumping for joy about all that.
Yeah, because the world, the economic world, is now much more connected than it was during the Cold War days, and now it's a different China, and it's also the willingness to fight a war. So tell me, how in your assessments, South Asians in the United States in particular, how did they view this midterm elections? Were they uh, keen on Democrats or Republicans? Uh, how did it go?
See, figures haven't come out yet, but South Asians, by and large, they lean Democrat, and they vote in great numbers for the Democratic Party. So, and some of the election denial and extreme anti-immigrant rhetoric that came from the Republican Party was not very comforting for South Asians. So let's wait and see when the actual figures come out. But by and large, I did not detect any great shift um, to the Republican Party. Even though Donald Trump had a Diwali reception for Indian Americans in
Oh
Mar-a-Lago.
wow! Oh
And
wow!
yeah, I mean, of course, they don't say Indian Americans, they say Hindu Americans. But be that as it may, there is a slice of the Indian Americans that is that has shifted to the Republican Party.
अच्छा, and उसकी वजह क्या है? I mean, I'll tell you the
यही है कि देखिए वो भी देख रहे हैं कि लीगल इमिग्रेशन से बहुत गड़बड़ होगी और जॉब्स माइट बी एंडेंजर्ड सो जो लीगली यहाँ पे आए हैं उन उनका पत्ता कट सकता है you know
oh my God.
फिर then there's always the tax issue that Democrats want to tax you more and Republicans a little bit less.
So it's the rich Indian American. You'd
Probably, yeah, yeah.
it's so interesting. It reminds me of what's happening in the UK. I mean, here Suella Braverman, who's of Kenyan origin, Indian descent, and how, I mean, she is so unhappy with more migration from India and Indians overstaying. So all of that. I mean, if you're there, you don't want others like you to come. So
Mhm.
probably that kind of discomfort. What about India itself? I mean, what impact? I'm sure Delhi must be watching very carefully these elections. What sense did you get? I mean, what were their expectations? दुआ किसके लिए मांग रहे थे?
ये तो मुझे पता नहीं दुआ किसके लिए मांग रहे थे पर I think the results must have satisfied the establishment because stability रहेगी अगले 2 साल तक कम से कम 2 साल के लिए तो गाड़ी चलेगी आराम से फिर टर्मोइल 2024 में क्या होता है ये नहीं पता पर generally the bipartisan support that India enjoys in the US Congress is a big source of comfort for the Indian establishment. So it's not as if Republicans had taken over that they would have made a huge foreign policy break in terms of the India relationship. They wouldn't have.
Right.
If anything, they would have come down on China harder. That was the kind of sense one got from what they were saying. They feel that the Biden administration is not stringent enough in the measures it has taken vis-a-vis China, in terms of whether it's decoupling or, um, giving Taiwan a sense of, comfort that they will come and defend Taiwan if
You
China were.
know, it's important foreign policy question in United States and also in Delhi, that the position that United States would take vis-a-vis India, especially on Indian support to the United States around Ukraine, Russia India relations, etc. Now, one of the arguments which probably stops United States from being more aggressive vis-a-vis India is that, what does India do? I mean, India has to make that switch. 60% of weapons still come from Russia, so it has to, have those relations. Of course, when Germany is buying oil and gas from Russia, then, why not India? There are all these arguments. Now, I'm sure you must be watching very closely how Democrats versus Republicans argue around this issue. जब भी डिबेट होती होगी कि भाई इंडिया को डांटना है, इंडिया को कोक्स करना है, तो where do you see a difference in positions, Democrat versus Republicans?
Not majorly, not in any major sense. See, they both sides, both Republicans and Democrats, wish that India would have taken a stronger position on the war. But Indian diplomacy around the question has been pretty good. They've gone to Capitol Hill and explained the real situation. Besides, some Republicans buy the argument that don't push Russia completely into the Chinese corner. That's
Right.
not to American advantage in the long run. So if China is your primary challenger, that is America's primary challenger, do you really want the Russia-China alliance to be, cast in stone? Or do you want to leave some space over there? So, all that the Americans understand, but a lot of the narrative in Washington is emotional around this question. The Russian war against Ukraine, it's become very, question of morals and this and that. And but in quieter, more realistic moments, they do understand that India cannot afford to anger Russia. What if Putin turned on India, which is possible, so then what happens to the entire Quad, or what happens to America's own relationship with India? What happens to so many other larger questions? This is a European war in which India has some stakes, but it's not a gigantic problem for Asia.
No, you're right. I mean, I remember that the welcome which was accorded in Europe. I mean, I sit in the UK, and the welcome that was accorded to, say, Afghan refugees. जब वो आ रहे थे, तो there were questions. I mean, Boris Johnson, for example, managed to get the dogs out or out of Kabul rather than people. So there were those stories. But there was a very different kind of a welcome accorded to Ukrainians. There was almost like different migrants, different policy. So yeah, so that way I understand that. So basically, what you're saying, this is my final thing to you, is that South Asia, it will be the same policy regarding South Asia, trying to balance China, push China, and focused around China, right?
Yes, and in that project, India is very important for the Americans. So the whole initiative, the Indo-Pacific policy that started under the Trump administration and got solidified under the Biden administration, is the centerpiece in Asia. And in that, India plays a big role. So I don't see anything. And the Republicans are also keen on the same project.
Right, right. One final question, which is more South Asia. So, Seema, is there any interest in Washington? You know, एक जमाने में Washington इंडिया पाकिस्तान की बड़ी बात करवा देता था. So it was an interlocutor. अब कोई इंटरेस्ट है?
मतलब कर्सरी इंटरेस्ट है. अभी तो उनका सबसे बड़ा इंटरेस्ट ये है कि पाकिस्तान में क्या हो रहा है उसको किसी तरह से अगर स्टेबिलिटी ज्यादा हो जाए तो ज्यादा अच्छा है. एंड you know, nobody wants the chaos of Imran Khan again, if I may say so. So the American project in Pakistan right now would be to somehow bolster the current government and see that everything goes accordingly. And in terms of initiating an India-Pakistan dialogue, they make the regular noises on that, but I don't think they're pushing either side to do, to actually do something. Because India's position is very clear now that unless things change in terms of the various terrorist groups, they're not interested. बैक चैनल टॉक्स तो चल ही रही हैं मेरे ख्याल से, पर जो मेन टॉक्स का पता नहीं कब हो, अगर होंगी.
Right. So when will we finally get the final results of US elections?
In 1 or 2 days, I think the counting in California should be over. And then runoff in Georgia is in the first week of December, I think 5th of December. तो अभी तो time है. But Senate का तो मामला खत्म हो चुका है. मतलब Democrats control the Senate. If they get Georgia, then it's an extra bonus. But House should be clear in a couple of days.
Right. Thank you, Seema Sirohi, for sharing your time and your thoughts on what's happening, what just happened in US midterm elections, how South Asia should look at it, and how should the world look at it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.